Welcome back to Fairy Garden Discoveries, where STEM takes flight. One morning, Bella stepped into the garden and noticed something strange. Her shadow was longer than usual, and it didn't seem to stay in one place. As the day unfolded, Bella discovered that some changes don't happen all at once. They happen quietly, when we slow down enough to notice. Bella stepped into the garden just as morning was waking up. The air felt cool and new, and the sun peeked over the fence like it was shy to begin the day. Dew sparkled on the leaves, and the flowers leaned gently toward the light. Bella stretched her arms wide and smiled. Then she noticed something curious. Her shadow stretched across the ground in front of her. Long and thin, reaching all the way to the stepping stones. It looked taller than she was, and a little bit wiggly at the edges, as if it had just finished waking up too. Bella took a step forward. Her shadow stepped too. She lifted her arm, and her shadow lifted its arm, but much longer, like it was trying to touch the garden gate. Bella laughed softly. She had seen her shadow before, of course, but never quite like this. "Why are you so long today?" she wondered aloud. The garden did not answer. The sun warmed her cheeks, and the shadow stayed right where it was, quiet, stretched, and waiting. Bella felt a flutter of excitement. Something about this morning felt different, as if the day had a secret it was just beginning to tell. Bella decided to investigate. She turned sideways, then leaned forward, then stood very, very straight. Each time her shadow followed, but it never quite did what she expected. Sometimes it grew thinner, sometimes it bent at odd angles, but no matter how she stood, it stayed long and stretched across the dirt. Bella frowned. She tried stepping backward. She tried standing on her tiptoes. She even waved her arms slowly, as if her shadow might decide to shrink if she asked nicely enough. But it didn't. Her shadow stayed long and patient, as though it had all the time in the world. Bella crossed her arms. "I just want you to look normal," she said, not unkindly, but with a small sigh. The flowers rustled softly. A bee drifted past. Somewhere underground, Mela was surely busy with roots and soil, but Bella stayed where she was, watching. She realized something then. No matter how much she tried to change her shadow, it didn't listen. It wasn't being stubborn. It simply wasn't waiting for instructions. Bella's shoulders relaxed. Maybe this wasn't something she could fix. Maybe it was something she needed to watch. Bella left the garden for a little while to help carry water and gather leaves. The sun climbed higher, though she didn't notice it moving at all. When she returned, she stopped short. Her shadow was no longer where she had left it. It had slid sideways across the ground, now pointing toward the herb bed instead of the stepping stones. Bella blinked and looked around. Nothing else had moved. The rocks were the same. The fence hadn't budged. The flowers still nodded gently in the breeze. Bella looked down at her feet. "I didn't move you," she whispered to her shadow. The shadow said nothing. Bella felt a tiny shiver, not of fear, but of wonder. Something had changed while she was gone. Slowly, quietly, without asking her permission. She sat down on the garden path and stared at the ground, tracing where the shadow had been and where it was now. The change wasn't big, but it was real. Bella hugged her knees and watched carefully. The garden felt calm, as if it were telling her, "This happens all the time." And for the first time, Bella realized that some changes don't announce themselves. They simply happen, one small moment at a time. Bella decided it was time to ask for help. She found the garden fairies near the roses, their wings shimmering softly in the growing light. They listened as Bella explained everything: the long shadow, the moving shadow, the way it changed without her touching it at all. When she finished, she waited for an answer, but the fairies didn't explain right away. Instead, one of them smiled and said, "What have you noticed so far?" Bella paused. "I noticed that my shadow was longest in the morning," she said slowly, "and that it moved, even when I didn't." Another fairy nodded. "And what happened when you tried to fix it?" Bella thought about that too. It didn't work. The fairies didn't laugh. They didn't hurry her. "Then perhaps," one said gently, "this is a day for watching instead of fixing." Bella looked back at the garden. The sun was brighter now. The shadows were changing again, slowly, quietly, as if they were following rules she hadn't learned yet. Bella felt something settle inside her. She didn't need all the answers right away. Today, she would watch. By mid-morning, the garden felt warmer. Bella stood in the same spot as before and looked down. Her shadow was still there, but it wasn't the same. It no longer stretched across the stepping stones. Instead, it stayed closer to her feet, shorter and darker, as if it had folded itself inward. Bella crouched low to see it better. "Did you shrink?" she asked. The shadow didn't answer, but Bella noticed something important. The sun was higher now, shining more directly overhead. The light felt stronger, less slanted. Bella tilted her head and looked from the sun to the ground and back again. She didn't touch anything this time. She didn't try to fix it. She simply watched. The shadow stayed near her shoes, moving only a little as the minutes passed. Bella realized that even though the change was slower now, it was still happening. She smiled. Maybe the shadow wasn't misbehaving at all. Maybe it was following rules she hadn't noticed before, rules written in light and time. Bella sat quietly on the warm stone path, letting the sun and shadow show her what they were doing, without asking them to hurry. Bella decided to look beyond herself. She placed a small stone in the sunlight and watched its shadow fall beside it. Then she set down a flower pot, a lantern, and even her watering can. Each one cast a shadow, some wide, some narrow, some barely visible at all, and all of them were changing. Bella noticed that as the sun climbed higher, every shadow grew shorter together. The stone's shadow shrank. The lantern's shadow tucked itself closer. Even the tall sunflower's shadow no longer reached across the soil. "It's not just me," Bella whispered. The garden felt different now. Not confusing, but connected. Everything stood still, yet everything changed. The sun didn't seem to rush, and neither did the shadows. They moved together, slowly and steadily. Bella felt a small shift inside herself too. She didn't feel like fixing or solving anything anymore. She felt like noticing, comparing, learning. For the first time that day, Bella understood that sometimes the best way to understand the world is to look at how many things change in the same way, at the same time. Bella waited. At first, it felt like nothing was happening at all. The sun stayed bright. The garden hummed softly. Bees drifted from flower to flower. The shadows barely seemed to move. Bella wondered if she had imagined the changes earlier. Then she looked closer. The shadow of the lantern had shifted just a little, barely the width of her finger. The stone's shadow was not quite where it had been before. The sunflower's shadow leaned ever so slightly. Bella's eyes widened. "It's still moving," she whispered. She realized that the waiting wasn't empty time. It was full of tiny changes, so small they only revealed themselves to someone who stayed still long enough to see them. Bella took a deep breath and let herself slow down. The garden didn't rush. The sun didn't rush. And Bella didn't need to rush either. For the first time, waiting felt like something she was doing, not something she was missing. When the sun reached its highest point, the garden felt almost hushed. Bella stood up and looked down. Her shadow was the shortest it had been all day, so small it nearly hid beneath her feet. It no longer stretched or leaned. It simply rested there, dark and quiet. Bella felt calm. This moment didn't last long, but it felt important, like the center of the day. She realized that the shadow wasn't gone. It had just changed again. Bella smiled softly. Not everything announces itself with big movement. Some changes are brief, easy to miss, and meaningful all the same. She understood now that the sun hadn't rushed across the sky, and the shadows hadn't wandered on their own. Something larger was happening, something steady and gentle that carried the whole garden with it. Bella stood still in the sunlight, knowing that soon the shadows would grow long again, just not yet. Bella watched her shadow for a long while. It had begun to stretch again, slowly reaching away from her feet, but now it leaned in the opposite direction from the morning. Bella traced the edge of it with her finger and frowned, not in frustration, but in thought. "The sun doesn't look like it's moving," she said quietly, "but my shadow keeps changing." She looked up at the sky. The sun shone steadily, bright and patient, as if it had been there forever and would stay just the same. Bella felt a new question forming, one that felt bigger than the garden path. If the sun isn't rushing across the sky, she wondered, why do the shadows move at all? She didn't feel hurried to answer it. The question itself felt important, like a door that had just begun to open. Bella stood very still, noticing how the garden felt the same, and yet not the same at all. The light had shifted. The air felt warmer. The shadows leaned gently westward now. Bella smiled softly. Some questions weren't meant to be answered right away. Some were meant to be carried for a while, like a smooth stone in your pocket, warming slowly as you walked. An elder fairy joined Bella beneath the apple tree. Without speaking, she knelt and drew a wide circle in the dirt. Then she placed a small pebble on one side and a leaf in the center. "This is the sun," the fairy said, touching the leaf, "and this is us." Slowly, very slowly, she moved the pebble around the circle. "The sun doesn't race across the sky," the fairy explained. "The earth turns. We turn with it." Bella watched, her eyes wide. "The garden turns?" she asked. "Yes," the fairy smiled. "And so do you." Bella looked down at her feet, then at the garden around her. She imagined the whole world turning, so gently she had never felt it before. Trees, stones, shadows, all moving together. Nothing suddenly made sense all at once, but something settled inside her. The shadows weren't wandering. They were showing her the turning of the earth. Bella felt a quiet awe bloom in her chest. She wasn't standing still after all. She was part of something always in motion. As the afternoon stretched on, Bella watched the shadows grow longer again. They leaned away from the sun now, pointing back toward where morning had begun. Bella noticed how the garden repeated itself, but not exactly. The shadows were long again, but softer than before. The light was warmer, more golden. Bella didn't feel surprised. She had started to expect these changes. "This happens every day," she whispered. "I just never noticed." She smiled at how confident she felt. not because she could control what was happening, but because she understood it better. The garden felt like a story she was finally learning how to read. Bella guessed where her shadow would fall next. When it did, she laughed softly. Understanding felt different than fixing. It felt calm, steady, kind. Bella realized she didn't need to rush the day or hold on to it. She only needed to notice it, one slow moment at a time. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows stretched farther across the ground. Bella sat quietly, watching them move, feeling the gentle turning of the day. She thought about how she had tried to fix her shadow that morning, how impatient she had felt. Now she felt different. She hadn't changed the shadows at all, but she had changed. Bella understood that some things don't need to be hurried or handled. Some things need space, time, watching. The garden had taught her that movement doesn't always feel like motion, and learning doesn't always feel like effort. She rested her hands on the warm earth and smiled. The shadows kept moving, just as they always had. And Bella, without even realizing it, had learned how to move with them. As the sun drifted lower, the garden softened. Golden light spilled across the leaves, and the air cooled just enough to feel like a deep, steady breath. Bella stood where she had begun that morning and looked down one last time. Her shadow stretched long again, reaching across the ground the way it had at sunrise. But it felt different now. It wasn't surprising. It wasn't confusing. It felt familiar. Bella traced the edge of it slowly, remembering how the day had unfolded. The long morning shadow, the short noon shadow, the quiet waiting, the gentle turning. It came back. She whispered. The garden glowed around her, and Bella realized that the day had made a full circle. The shadows hadn't wandered or disappeared. They had followed a rhythm, one she could now see. Bella felt proud, not because she had solved something quickly, but because she had stayed long enough to understand it. The shadows lengthened as the sun dipped toward rest, and Bella smiled, knowing that tomorrow the dance of light and shadow would begin again, just as it always had. That evening, Bella lay on her back and watched the sky deepen into twilight. The sun slipped away, and the shadows faded into darkness, their work for the day complete. Bella felt calm, full in a way she hadn't that morning. She thought about how the earth had been turning all day, quietly, gently, carrying her, the garden, and every shadow along with it. Nothing had rushed. Nothing had stopped. The world had moved, even when it felt still. Bella hugged her knees and smiled. She understood now that some changes are slow, and some answers take time. Trying to hurry them only makes them harder to see. But when you slow down, when you watch and wonder, the world begins to explain itself. The stars appeared one by one. Bella closed her eyes, ready for tomorrow, knowing that even when she stood still, she was part of something always moving. And somewhere, as the earth turned through the night, the shadows waited patiently for morning.